Hey Victoria, welcome back to another episode of Town Talk, where we talk to different community members, city staff members, leaders about what's going on in Victoria. And so today we have a very special guest. It's Mr. Joel Novosad. He's the director of our Convention and Visitors Bureau. Joel, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for being here. And we're also, in case you guys haven't noticed, if you haven't been, we're at the Museum of the Coastal Bend here, located right next to Victoria College. So if you haven't checked it out, there's a lot of good, rich history about Victoria. And ironically, that's what we're going to talk about here today. Right,
yeah,
Joel?
Absolutely. The museum features over 13,000 years of history in the Coastal Bend. So going back to the early peoples of the region, the Karankawa Native Americans, also the French exploration, French explorer Robert La Salle, going through the Spanish settlements, all the way through Mexican history, Texas history, so up to the modern day to a degree. So lots of great history at the museum.
Right, lots of good information. So before we get started, talk to us a little bit about yourself. Fun fact?
Well, I am the director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I joined the CVB in January of 2012. So very excited to see how the community has grown in just that short amount of time. A lot of interesting things have happened in our community in those years. Just very happy and blessed to be a part of the City of Victoria, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, helping all of our great tourism partners succeed and promoting our community to visitors and residents. But myself, I am a Fightin' Texas Aggie class of 2010. Hey. Graduated with a degree in Recreation, Parks, and Tourism Sciences. Proud father to two beautiful girls and another girl puppy. So I'm a, dad, I'm a girl dad surrounded by young ladies, and it's wonderful, and my beautiful wife Ashley too. So just very happy to be a part of Victoria and raise my family in this community.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
It's a fun, jam-packed household, I bet.
Yeah. Keeps us busy.
You got to share. What's the puppy's name?
Lola.
Lola.
We got her from Dorothea Connor Pet Adoption Center.
How fun.
Part German Shepherd. Actually, we stole her name from her sister. She was in a litter of puppies, and her sister was Lola. Her name was actually Cleo when we adopted her. And after a while, we liked Lola a lot more, so we just gave her sister's name.
Just stole the siblings' rights.
Yeah.
It's okay. It happens. Well, thank you again for sharing, and thanks for being here. So before we get started, we're going to talk about, obviously, history. So tell us about how you came into experiencing Victoria's rich history firsthand.
Well, that is a really interesting story. So not too long after I started working with the CVB, there was a filming project here called Texas Before the Alamo, and it was shot to talk about the early European settlements in the region in Victoria County. So there was some reenactors. We helped shuttle them around.
How fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And they actually took a boat ride up Garcetas Creek to the site of the French settlement of French explorer La Salle. So they had some filming out there with reenactors in period dress and to just kind of be a part of that really significant place in Victoria's history and the state's history. We even went to a gentleman's shop who was working on a reenactment of the LaBelle ship. And it's amazing to see how small it was, a recreation of the LaBelle ship, how small it was and how that they took that across the entire ocean to come here. And you know, the funny thing is about, you know, the Six Flags of Texas, you see the French flag, a lot of people kind of raise their eyebrows like, when did that happen?
Right.
But that actually happened here in Victoria County. Victoria County is the only place in Texas where these Six Flags actually truly flew, because that's the only site of the French settlement in Texas. And it was a huge catalyst for exploration in the region, for the Spanish to come and lay claim to their territory, because they were hearing about these guys kind of moving in on their space. So they really invested more heavily in Texas after that. So the French settlement and the French explorers were a huge catalyst for Texas as we know it today.
That's awesome. So clearly we have an expert, or I'd like to say an expert in Victoria's history, and you should be. You know, you're supposed to be welcoming visitors into Victoria and showing them around. So speaking of that, are you a good driver?
I'm a great driver.
I would say so, because you're kind of spearheading the Old Victoria driving tour, is that right?
Absolutely.
So talk to us about that.
Sure. So the Old Victoria driving tour is a self-guided trek around Victoria's historic homes and properties. We really have a wealth of historic homes and architecture here in Victoria that route has over 80 properties on it. A lot of them are listed on the National Register of Historic Places or their Texas State Historic Landmarks. And we have different ways to experience that tour. You can come to the Visitor Center, the Explore Victoria Visitor Center, and pick up a printed brochure of the Old Victoria Driving Tour Guide. You can also go to our website at explorevictoriatex.com and request that to be mailed to you. Or we also have a really exciting brand new story map feature where you can actually look at the entire route online, look at pictures and stories behind each location, and you can use that application to pinpoint your location in relation to the locations on the list.
Right.
So you can really you can experience paper, you can experience it digitally, but the Old Victoria Driving Tour is one of the most important, popular things for people to do when they come to visit Victoria.
So out of the downtown houses, are there any fun stories you can share?
Absolutely.
I mean, give us a quick preview,
Yeah.
like, you know,
Sure.
just those who may be interested
There
in
are
taking
two
it.
homes that we really highlight on the tour. They're beautiful homes in and of themselves already, but the Reagan House and the Huck Welder House. And we're located actually in Indianola, which is a ghost town of sorts now, just 30 miles from Victoria along the Texas coast. They were ravaged by 2 hurricanes, and these 2 houses were moved to Victoria piece by piece. They were taken apart. Each part of the house, board down to board and everything, was numbered, and then they were moved back to Victoria and assembled in the manner that they should have been. So,
Wow.
so the Reagan House and the Huck Welder House are 2 beautiful homes on the tour and have a really great story there. There's also the Callender House, which is considered to be the first house in Texas made of milled lumber. And we've got there is a Phillips House, which was the site of a reception for Sam Houston back in the day when he was still a big fixture alive and in fixture in Texas politics and Texas society. So, Victoria is founded in 1824. We're one of the oldest cities in Texas. So we've got a tremendous history here. And the homes on the Old Victoria Driving Tour really help tell that.
That's neat. So speaking of telling us stories, you kind of alluded to this in the beginning, you know, with history. Talk to us about Victoria's trail through time.
So there's a lot of history in Victoria that's still visible.
Right.
Speaking of which, the Old Victoria Driving Tour, but there's a lot of interesting places or buildings or places or people or stories that, that history is not visible anymore. So the Old Victoria Driving Tour tells those stories visually. There are some large blue-legged interpretive panels that you'll see around town. We have 7 in downtown Victoria, 4 in Riverside Park, and then 1 at the Victoria Regional Airport, and they tell about some person or place or event that happened in Victoria's fascinating history. So there's some really great illustrations on there, wonderful stories, and you can visit those. You can go to explorevictoriatex.com, have the locations there, and you can also, if you stop at each of those, any of the locations, we have some rack cards on display there with the QR code that you can use to get a free I Explored Victoria, Texas t-shirt.
Nice.
Yeah, so you just go scan the QR code on the card, go to explorevictoriatex.com, and we'll mail you a shirt. Or if you're not so technologically inclined, you can just bring your card in or come and tell us at the Explore Victoria Visitor Center about your experience and that you visited one of the Trail Through Time locations.
Awesome. Can't beat free.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're really nice shirts. Very comfortable.
So before you talk to us a little bit more about what you've got going on, Joel, and CVB, tell me a fun childhood experience you may have had as it relates to history. For example, I used to collect little coins, and I don't know, I thought it was cool. Did you have any fun history-related childhood memories?
I guess, I don't know if I had any fun history. You're talking about collections and collecting things, and you think things that are going to be valuable. I collected of course, you collected like all kinds of basketball cards and things like that, because you thought, they were going to be worth so much money back then. I collected Pokemon cards.
I was going to say Pokemon,
yes,
but I was thinking, should I
that
share
was
that
be
nerd
history,
alert?
right? Yeah, no, it's okay.
That
was going to be history, right? That was going to be
Right.
worth a lot of money. So, no, I have always been very interested in history and learning about your roots. And my family's from the Moulton area, which is just a small town about
not far from here.
Yeah, about 800 people, about an hour north of here. There is a fun fact. Allegedly, if you look up the history of Judge Roy Bean, who is a very famous, folklore figure in Texas history, I'm apparently distantly related to him.
That is a fun fact.
Yes, I have a sign in my office of some old painting that was done with him from a beverage company. Did ads like with Western heroes and so. I've got that picture in my office, so yeah, I am. So I have always been kind of really enjoyed watching Western movies and that kind of thing. So I do have that kind of romanticism about the Western days. And of course, so Victoria's history really interests me, of course, because our history goes back to those kind of times.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
So do you have collectibles?
I don't have really any collectibles, but I do, enjoy watching Western films. Probably The Outlaw Josie Wales is probably my favorite Western film. The old Clint Eastwood films.
I was just about to say, did you collect the John Wayne movies, or?
I was not a big John Wayne guy.
Really?
I was more of a Clint Eastwood guy. Yeah.
Shh, we won't include that. Blasphemy. Just kidding. So going back to history, right, and what you guys are working on, what's next? What else do you have?
Well, we're going to be partnering with the Museum of the Coastal Bend and with Uncle Mutt's Barbecue to have a really great promotion that ties in a great nonprofit tourism partner and a great local business. So one of the really cool activities to do here at the museum is the atlatl spear throwing. And so it's actually an ancient weapon that predates the bow and arrow. And the atlatl is basically this type of wood, I don't even know how to describe it really. It's this contraption, and it throws a long dart, a spear, which could be 4 or 5 feet long. And the ancient peoples used it to really get the velocity on the spear that they needed to take down the mammoth or the bison.
Wow.
So we have targets here that we designed for the museum that have a woolly mammoth on it with a bullseye on it. And with the promotion at the museum, after you have a couple of tries to hit the bullseye, and if you hit it, you'll get a voucher for a free barbecue sandwich from Uncle Mutt's Barbecue. So you're literally hunting for your food.
Literally.
And Uncle Mutt's will be able to give a free barbecue sandwich for those who hit the bullseye, and then the CVB will redeem the vouchers for Uncle Mutt's. So we're all working together on this really cool promotion to tie in a great tourism partner in a local restaurant that people love.
That's so neat. So where can one practice?
You can come here. Yeah, you can actually come to the Museum of the Coastal Bend. You can you can set up the targets, and it's a few years ago we made woolly mammoth targets for them just as a a cool thing for them to do, and printed those out for them, and they've been using them ever since. But as I've thought about it, I'm like, how can we get even more involved with that, and how can we really make it a really interesting thing? And people, like you said, people love free things and promotions, and so it's a way for, like I said, literally hunt for your food here at the Museum of the Coastal Bend. Right,
exactly. That kind of reminds me of axe throwing. Have you been?
I've never done axe throwing before, no. I've seen the videos where it bounces back and almost hits people in the head. So.
Yeah, don't try that at home. So you mentioned tours earlier. Talk to me about the Victoria County tours. What does that look like?
Well, I just went on one myself just the other day with Victoria Preservation Incorporated. So Director Jeff Wright was leading that tour, and really got to see some really interesting history inside the Victoria County Courthouse. Our courthouse is from 1892. Was restored painstakingly, beautifully restored around 2001, turn of the century here, and survived, those days where it was like, should we just demolish it and build a brand new courthouse? You saw that happen to, unfortunately, a lot of courthouses and old buildings in Texas. But Victoria County's courthouse is luckily one of those that survived those kind of initiatives and survived, and it's here today, and it's really a huge asset for Victoria's historical tourism. And so Victoria Preservation has started leading some tours of the facility. It was a free tour. Victoria County Commissioners had kind of wanted to see that happen. It was very cool just to be inside what is still a working courthouse too, to see all the great architectural features in there. And there's some really fun stories in there of things that have happened. Jeff was showing us a piece that's of when they were redoing. You walk in there and the walls have this particular pattern on it. Well, when they were restoring the courthouse, that pattern wasn't there. It was just kind of like a bland gray wall. Well, they removed a old telephone box, and when they did, the original pattern was behind it.
Wow.
So they could see what the original painting of the courthouse interior was like from that telephone box that was removed. And it survived. Jeff was telling a funny story about how somebody who was in there working saw that and thought he was supposed to paint over it. So he did, and the Victoria Preservation Director at the time, Gary Dunham, apparently, according to Jeff, took his shirt off, made it soaking wet, and wiped all the paint off of there. So that little bit actually then was saved to show what the original paint was. There's also some really cool stories, funny stories. There was a little smiley, the pattern inside has a little smiley face look to it. all around the walls. And apparently a trustee who was working in there painted an upside down smiley face as a joke, and they thought the architect wasn't going to like it, but he thought it was hilarious. So on the tour, they'll also point just fun little things about the features there in the courthouse.
Well, one thing that I noticed, I was in the courthouse, we work a lot closely with the county. There's the windows, of course, but then you see what looks almost like metal black outside of the windows, a covering.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, this kind of feels like, very restrictive. What is that for? And I thought it was just a fancy design, maybe Spanish inspired, and maybe it is. Maybe you could answer. But I was around some folks, and they said it's because of hurricanes and weather, and that's how they protected from.
And also for fireproofing too was a big thing. You have to remember in those times, the courthouse held just the vital records for the entire community. There were no computer systems; like everything was in there, birth records, deeds, and so fires would have been absolutely devastating back then. So if you look and you walk in there, you'll also see some metal kind of arches on the roofing too, and that's all fire prevention measures. So some pretty cool architectural features there in the courthouse. So they're going to be having those tours regularly. They don't have an exact schedule planned of that yet. Those spots on those tours will be limited because you have to remember it is a working courthouse, so you can't have too large of a tour, and you can't have them too often because you've got people in there doing the regular daily business of our Victoria County in there.
Exactly. Cool. So where can they find out more information about the Victoria County?
Yeah, you can absolutely go to Victoria Preservation site or their Facebook page, or give Victoria Preservation a call. Speak to Director Jeff Wright if you're interested in learning more about the courthouse tours.
We'll put the phone number on the video as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, look here.
Courthouse tour.
Well, we talked about a lot. Before we take our next venture, right? Is there anything else you wanted to share with our viewers?
Well, Victoria's just, it's not just about the history too. We've got a lot of great things here in our community.
Oh, absolutely.
And we work really hard to promote those at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We've got a great website at explorevictoriatexas.com. We've got a great itinerary builder tool on there, so you can actually build your own experience in Victoria. So not only can you add great historical sites like the Victoria County Courthouse or the Museum of the Coastal Bend, but you can also add shopping and dining and nightlife, and even if you're planning a trip in for family and friends, if they're needing a place to stay, you can add hotels to it as well. So we've got a great itinerary builder tool at explorevictoriatexas.com, a little module that says click here to plan your trip on every page there.
That's perfect.
So yeah, absolutely.
Helps
Please
make your trip to Victoria much easier.
Yes, you can plan everything out nice and clean, print it off.
Yeah,
absolutely.
To a fault.
Yeah. And we have some themed itineraries on there too, some suggestions we have. If depending on the kind of trip you're looking at, if you're looking for a couple's trip to Victoria, or you're looking for a family trip to Victoria, and if you're a resident, that's a great way also for you to just kind of plan a staycation here.
Absolutely.
We've got a lot of great activities and attractions to build out a weekend for you and your family. So we encourage anyone to go to explorevictoriatexas.com. Also, our events calendar is a really great resource for the community. We really work hard to keep that regularly updated with large events and even just smaller events like great local musicians playing at different venues around town. We work to keep that updated as well.
That's so helpful. I can't tell you how many times I hear, maybe in my community or my circle, there's nothing going on, and I'm thinking there's so much going on. Maybe you should try Explore Victoria's calendar. The City of Victoria even, but mainly Explore Victoria for fun events and activities for the family. So anyway, now that we've talked about that, you had a fun announcement to make. And I'm going to pass it over to Joel now, and as it relates to this podcast.
Well, we're really excited to be partnering with the Communications Department and the TOWNtalks program to be presenting the Explore Your Victoria program. So we'll be appearing regularly with our own program, highlighting those great ways that you can experience your own community right here in Victoria. So we'll be sitting down with great tourist attractions, tourism partners, event planners. Really just we want you to tune in to see, because all the great people that we're going to be meeting with and talking about how you can explore your own community.
That's exactly right. And kudos to my team. I have to give a shout out to the videographers, to my social media and communication specialists. They're such a great job on making this happen. And we've kind of all put our heads together to make it happen. And we're excited that Joel's going to be spearheading those episodes. And just so you know, it will be releasing the second Tuesday of every month. A podcast will be. Now, Joel's will be rotating, so we're excited to see how that works as well. So we hope you stay tuned. And without further ado, we're in the best place to take a tour.
Experience some Victoria history.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to check it out.
All right, let's go. Well, hey, thanks again for tuning into today's episode. I hope it was informative for you. It was great to be able to take a tour with Joel, our CVB director, and to learn about what all he's got going on with helping inform the public about culture and history of Victoria. So we hope you stay tuned. Don't forget to check out his new show, Explore Your Victoria. It's a partnership that we're doing with him, our communications department, and his team, and so we're excited to launch that. So stay tuned. We hope to see you then. Have a great rest of your day.